It's amazing with TV shows where you can go into an episode feeling all hyped, and then at the end of the episode, your emotions have done a 180. That's pretty much what happened to me. Now I'm more upset. Thanks, Walking Dead. This is my review of The Walking Dead Season 5 mid-season finale. Now, seriously, if you have not watched Episode 8, Coda, don't watch this video. I'm all emotional right now, and I'm going to spill so much about this episode. So, just do yourself a favour, if you haven't watched it, watch it, and then watch this video, okay? Alright, here we go. So in this episode, Rick and his group go face to face with Dawn and her officers. They want to try and save Beth and Carol without anyone having to die. I really wish it worked out like that, but it didn't. So by the end of this episode, all the separate groups are back together, so they'll all be together at the start of the next episode. Now let me just get into detail a bit of all those different groups before they got back together. Those groups being the church group, Rick's group, and the hospital group. So let me start with the church group. So at the start of the episode you see Father Gabriel at the school where the termites were, and you see Bob's leg all the maggots over and everything. And a heap of walkers that are there start chasing Gabriel back to the church. So Carl and Michonne let Gabriel back into the church, but all the walkers come in too, so they have to get out quick. And they get out of the same hole that Gabriel got out of in the other episode. And then they locked the doors up once they got outside, so all the walkers were trapped in the church. And at that moment, you see the big fire truck come straight through, destroy the barricade. So everyone in Glenn and Abraham's group meet up with the church group. And one of the things that happens there is that Maggie is told that Beth is alive. And she is so happy. Which is really funny because, like, a lot of people have noticed, including me, that Maggie has not even mentioned Beth all season. So she was so happy, and I just laughed like, oh, now you mention her. Okay. So they all go on their way to meet up with Rick's group. One thing that I've noticed is, out of all the characters on The Walking Dead, some have had some real big changes since when they first came on. One of those biggest transformations I've seen is Carl. Carl has changed so much since when I first saw him. When you first see him, he's just this little kid, never does what he's told, and gets into trouble. But these days, Carl is amazing. He's probably become one of my favourite characters out of the whole group, because he knows how to handle himself well with zombies now. He doesn't even hesitate shooting anyone anymore. He's matured so much, but then growing up in a zombie apocalypse will do that to a little kid. Next, let's move on to Rick's group, which consists of Rick, Tyrese, Sasha, Daryl, and Noah. I'm sorry, I should probably call it Crazy Rick's group. Seriously, that guy is crazy! I love Rick. Oh my god, he's crazy. The first scene of this episode is Officer Lamson running from what happened at the end of last episode. And you see Rick going after him, full speed. He runs past this walker, just casually slashes the walker's guts open. It just happened so quick, and that really made me laugh. Probably one of the funniest moments in this episode. And the walker just goes, ah. And then Rick gets into a police car and chases him down. And he's just like, stop. Stop. Okay. And he just knocks him over. I thought it was just gonna be like a little bump. Like, boom. No, full on. He goes flying. And then Rick just goes up. Lamson's telling Rick he broke his back, blah blah blah. You knew how this was gonna end. And Rick, he's just changed so much. He's standing over Lamson and he's just like, bang, shut up. So Rick and his group decide, let's go to the hospital and try and make a deal. Beth and Carol for Officer Shepard and Lakari. And they want to do it without any bodies dropping. Now, that could work, but I think at this point, guns blazing is probably the better way to go. Because you just can't trust anyone anymore in a zombie apocalypse. They've trusted people in the past, and you remember how that worked out. So, seriously, I would have much preferred just them running in, bang, 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 bang. Oh, whoops, one of our guys is dead. Oh well, all you are dead now too. Even if someone in Rick's group had died, it would have made more sense if it was just gun blazing. I wouldn't feel as bad. But they did not go that way. No, they tried to do it the easy way. And that did not work out very well. So now let's move on to the hospital group. There were a few scenes in this episode with Beth and Dawn having some talks, and there were some very nice talks. Now through this episode, I'm not sure how many people will agree with me, but I personally started liking Dawn a lot more. Because it was really showing she was nice, and the way she's been acting, it's just what's been happening during this apocalypse. Everyone changes. But Dawn is a nice person. She just has a weird way of showing it with the whole in Beth's face. Seriously, Beth's just all scarred up. So Beth was sitting near the elevator shaft. She was just sitting there. Dawn comes in. So Dawn and Beth start having this conversation where part of it, Dawn explains to Beth that she had protected Beth because Dawn had not told anyone that Beth killed that rapist cop a few episodes ago. And that was a really nice thing to do. While they're having this conversation, Officer O'Donnell walks in, hears everything, and he says to Dawn that things need to change. And Dawn needs to tell everyone about what Beth's done or else. And it gets to the point where Dawn and Officer O'Donnell are having this big fight, and O'Donnell has Dawn up against the wall, and then Beth is able to get him down the elevator shaft. So O'Donnell's dead. It was nice seeing these two team up for once. And then later, Dawn and Beth have another chat near Carol's bed, and Dawn says to Beth that it's okay to cry, but Beth's like, nope, not crying, don't do that anymore. They have this nice conversation. And not long after that, Carol opens her eyes, and then Carol and Beth come with Dawn and the other officers when they meet up with Rick's group inside the hospital. Now before I start talking about what you're all waiting for me to talk about, let's first talk about the post-credit scene. Now I said in my episode 1 review that Morgan was in it, but I didn't know at first until I went back and saw he was there, and it just shocked me. This time I hung around after the post-credit scene. After I missed the Morgan scene on the first episode, I did see it, but now I don't want to miss post-credit scenes anymore. So I always watch it right to the end. So yeah, in the post-credit scene, Morgan is in it again, and Morgan turns up at the school where the termites were and that Gabriel just was. And Morgan has a look around there, and then you see Morgan end up at the church, and the church is just destroyed inside. All those walkers have just gone through it and blah. And Morgan goes and makes this little shrine, makes like a little prayer. I think that maybe for his like son or something. But it was a nice little moment with Morgan, and he looks around at just how everything is in the church, has this little laugh, and then he notices a map which has Abraham's message to Rick on it. So before I kind of thought that Morgan was looking for Rick, otherwise I'm really not sure what he's been doing. When Morgan sees this map, you just see him think, oh, okay, I'm gonna go find Rick now. And then the episode ends. Now we gotta wait until next year to see what happens. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about what you want me to talk about. Alright. So Rick's group gets to the hospital, being escorted by a couple officers. Rick's whole group comes to the hospital, and they're in this hallway where you got their group, and then at the other end of the hallway you've got Dawn, Beth, Carol, who's in a wheelchair, but she's awake now, and you have all the other officers with them. Now, first let me start by saying the cinematography in that episode is amazing. Not just that scene, but that whole episode, just the way the cameras were being used was amazing. One of the big camera moments is in that big scene at the end. The cameras make the scene look slightly tilted, and I really love that look. And other than doing these reviews, I'm actually a photographer, so I love being behind a camera. So seeing this way of having it slightly tilted, and it made the scene look really cool, that gave me ideas. Like that looked really cool. Alright, here we go. So both groups, each end of the hallway, facing off, and they start the trade. First, Lakari gets traded for Carol, and that all goes smoothly. And then Beth gets traded for Shepard, and that all goes clearly. Whew, that went well. I thought something bad was going to happen. But something bad happened. Dawn screws up the deal. You saw it coming, but you didn't know what exactly was going to happen, but Dawn did screw up the deal. She says, nope, Noah, come back. Why? Because Dawn has lost officers, Noah was also there to begin with. So Noah needs to come back. But that's not the deal they made. But no, Noah says, alright, I'm coming. But before that, Beth gives Noah a big hug, and then Dawn says, "See, I knew you would be back." And then Beth gives Dawn this look like, "Oh Jesus, what's going to happen now?" Beth walks up to Dawn, and if I have not mentioned this yet, Beth had hid some scissors in her cast before the groups met up. Beth goes up to Dawn, and Beth says, "I get it now." Stab! Stabs Dawn with the scissors, and then Dawn accidentally... Beth is dead! Oh, why is she dead? I loved Beth, and now she's dead. Beth's group and the officers are all in shock. Even Dawn, because she did not mean to do it. Right. No, seriously, I believe Dawn did not mean to do that. It was just stab, just reaction. But still, it happened. You can't change that now. So, Daryl, all destroyed, goes up to Dawn and just goes bang. And that bit I saw coming. Beth dying, I didn't see coming. I think this is the first main character death that has not been either from a walker or murder. Seriously, I think this is the first one. Because this, like I said, it looked like Dawn shooting Beth was an accident. Some of you might not believe that, but I'm going to say it was. Still doesn't make me forgive Dawn, but that doesn't matter anyway. Dawn's dead. And so is Beth. So both groups get their guns out. Here's this guns blazing thing I was thinking was going to happen. Too late for Beth, but here we go. And Shepard, the female cop that was held hostage by Rick's group, goes, "Nah, hold your fire, guns down." Because now with so many cops dead, Shepard is now in charge. I haven't really mentioned her yet. I like Shepard. From what I've seen of her, I like her. She's probably the nicest cop they have in that whole group. And I think she will be a good leader for the officers now. Because no one else died in that episode after Beth and Dawn. Both groups just went their separate ways. And that leads me to what happened after. So the fire truck pulls up outside of the hospital. You had everyone that was at the church come out, running over to the hospital, and Rick's group comes out. Rick comes out all upset. And I think you can see on Glenn's face, he knew then what had happened. But Maggie hadn't yet, until she saw Daryl walking out with Beth's lifeless body in his arms. Now seriously, there's been scenes that has upset me on The Walking Dead so far. Being a show where a lot of people die, a lot of people you grow to like die, you're going to get upset at points. But Beth dying just broke me. And then Maggie sees Daryl holding Beth's body and she just collapses. Oh, that was so hard to watch. Because with Beth gone, Maggie's on her own now. Like, she's got Glenn and the rest of the group, but she's the only green left alive. And Maggie had just heard that Beth was alive, so all her hope came back. She probably thought that Beth was dead before that, and all her hope had come back. And then the second Maggie does see Beth, Beth is dead for good. Oh my god, that was so sad. I'm a big boy though. I will get over it. I just need some time. Let me give you now a few reasons why Beth dying is just so heartbreaking to me. First of all, like I said, she was Maggie's only family. So now she's gone and Maggie's all that's left, and that's just going to destroy Maggie. The second half of this season, I have no idea what Maggie's going to be like. She's just going to be so screwed up. Second of all, I reckon Beth is the youngest main character to die so far. Look, you had Sophia in season 2, but she was technically dead when they found her. She was just undead. This is the first on-screen death of a young character. Now, in real life, Emily Kinney is 29. She looks a lot younger on the show. She looks about 21 on the show. And I'm nearly 20, so she does kind of remind me of my age. She really ages well. Because of also her looking around my age, that leads to number 3, that I had a big crush on Beth. Now, I'll admit, Maggie, I personally like Maggie more because Lauren Cohan was also on Supernatural, which is like one of my favourite shows of all time. She was like one of the only actors or actresses on the show that I actually knew before The Walking Dead. So, yes, I always liked Maggie, but Beth had grown on me so much. She was a younger girl. She was so nice, and she was harmless. She still really didn't kill many people, any walkers either. She was just this sweet little girl, and now she's dead. Now the fourth thing about Beth dying, this isn't really about her dying, but more as, before I watched the episode, I had just looked on Facebook and I saw a Facebook status that said, "Rip Beth." I only saw it for a quick second, like probably not even a second, but you see something like that, it sticks in your head. I'd worried for ages that Beth is gonna die in the mid-season finale, and I was right. Just seeing how she died in the show, now I say this a lot, but that was heartbreaking. Even though I knew Beth was gonna die in the episode, it was just horrible to watch. I knew Beth was gonna die, but I didn't know how it was gonna happen. And isn't that a lot worse? I'd rather be shocked by someone's death and not know it was gonna happen than knowing it's gonna happen and just worrying all episode that they're gonna die, and then you get the moment when they die and it is a bit of relief now, you know they're dead and you're not worrying anymore, but still, I'm so upset about it. So now the whole group is back together and now they're heading off as a group. Now what do I think is going to happen now for the second half of this season? Now that the group's all back together, I reckon they're all going to go towards Washington DC. Even though Eugene's story was total BS, I think they'll still head towards Washington because it's a big place and they might be able to survive there. Maybe. At the end of the episode you get a bit of a sneak peek on what's happening in the second half of this season and you see them on the run now. Now I've read the comics, not all of it, but I've read up to when Gareth and his group gets killed by Rick and his group. I've seen up to that in the comics. So I don't know what's happening after that, but I have heard that they're going to a certain spot that's in the comics. They go to a spot in the comics before Herschel's farm, I think it is. There's been a couple of hints that they're going to go to this place. If it happens like in the comics, it might not go too well. And I've kind of seen some new characters who are going to come in the second half. I'm not going to get into any detail about these people, but one of the people who I reckon will definitely be with the group in some way by the end of the season is Morgan. Even if that's in the finale, we will see Morgan meet up with the group in the next half. And let me just think about who I reckon could die in our group by the end of the season. I'm not sure if someone else will die because we've lost Bob this season and now we've lost Beth. There's two main characters in a season and yeah, I don't know if someone else in our group will die. If someone dies, I'm thinking it could be Carol, just because they always kill the people who kind of have some wisdom and stuff, people who are like fairly relaxed with the group. And because you had Dale die, you had Herschel die, and I'm thinking Carol will kind of be like that, and then once they're all calm, Carol will go. The only other people I can think of is Noah and Father Gabriel, just because they're not main characters yet, I don't think anyway. So either of them could be picked off. If one of them dies, I reckon it'll be Noah, but I reckon they put him onto the show for something, not just to be like there for Beth and stuff. I reckon he could be around a bit longer. So far, I like Father Gabriel, but I think I would prefer if he went over Noah, just because Noah's a young guy, and other than Carl, you don't really have any young guys. It'd be good to have another young person now that Beth's gone. Carl's the only one left. Well, if you include Judith as well. But then, this show is just unpredictable. Like, a lot of it happens like the comics, but there are changes. Like, people are dead in the comics that are alive now, and there's people dead now who are still alive in the comics. Here's an example. This doesn't really spoil anything from the comics, because I'm not talking about someone who died, I'm talking about someone who's alive in the comics. In the comics, Sophia is still alive, as well as I believe Andrea is still alive. So both of them being alive and dead in the show, it's just anything could happen. Because I know there are a few people in this group now who are dead in the comics. I'm not going to say who, but there are a couple that are dead. And then also, you have characters in the show still who aren't in the comics. One being Daryl Dixon. So they could just kill him off. And I know a lot of people say, if Daryl dies, we will riot. Now, I just read something earlier today where Kirkman said he does not care if people riot. He might just do it because they're daring him to get rid of Daryl, because they say we will riot, and he'll just get rid of Daryl and go, okay, now riot. I don't think they would riot, but I definitely think a lot of them wouldn't watch the show anymore, and that's not a good thing. I reckon they'll keep Daryl alive a lot longer, even if Daryl dies like the last ever episode of The Walking Dead. The people who I don't see dying anytime soon, definitely Daryl, Rick, just because he's the main character, but that means nothing. Important characters die. I heard somewhere recently where someone was like, even if Rick died, they could, because they're changing Daryl in the show a bit, they're making him more sympathetic than he already was. And for all we know, Daryl can become the new Rick, the leader of the group. So, Rick could go. Anyone could go. That's one of the good things about the show. You're always on the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen next. Because it's the mid-season finale, I feel like I should let you know what I think of the season so far. I really enjoy it. I think there's been a lot of good stuff this season. One thing I could go without is having the thing where you have separate episodes for different groups. Like, I can understand how it works because you can really go into detail what's happening with each group, but still it's just not as enjoyable because you might have this one character in the whole show that you like, you know, like anyone else. What if that character's not on the show for like 3 or 4 episodes? People won't like that. It's good if you have pretty much all the characters together. Even if one's off in an episode, just don't have multiple groups separated. That I don't really like. I can understand why they do it though. But I have liked this season so far. I liked the things at the church. I thought that was really good. My favourite thing was probably the termites. Like, I didn't like the termites, but everything that happened with the termites was good. They thought they were so good at the start of the season, and then throughout it, they just... well, you know what happened. They got slaughtered. Now, I haven't even talked about that, because I haven't reviewed each episode. But now I'm going to talk about it. Gareth and his friends got slaughtered by Rick's group. Now, that does happen in the comics. But in the comics, it happens at the campsite where the termites were hanging out at. And Rick and a small group of people come over and take him out. With the snipers and the machetes and... yeah. But the way it happened in the show, I knew it was coming. Because I only read the night before that episode, that bit in the comics. So I knew it was coming. But the way it happened in the show was so much better. And one thing I loved was the whole... in the first episode, I don't know how many people noticed this, in the first episode, when they were hanging over the trough, Rick was explaining to Gareth all the weapons he had buried. And one of those things being a red-handled machete, that's what I'm going to use to kill you. That moment, I didn't think much of it. It was just something Rick was saying. He was just like, he's going to get Gareth. And yeah, I didn't think much of it. But then, once Gareth and his team got slaughtered, right before that, you see Rick near his belt, and you see the red handle for the machete. And then when you see that, you're like, oh shit, what's happening? And then, whack. And not just whack, I mean, he just hacks at him. Oh my god, and Rick's just covered in blood. All the other termites are getting taken out too. They're just getting butchered. That's pretty much what the termites were planning on doing with Rick's group at the start of the season. But instead, it was the termites who got absolutely butchered. Throughout this season, I reckon that was my favourite moment of the season so far. It was just excellent. I've watched that moment so many times since it happened. That's... I'm a bit weird where watching scenes like that is really fun to watch. Like, but then also the termites were bad people, so it didn't feel as bad. It was like a full-on murderous scene, and with the good guys dying, I wouldn't even want to watch it the first time. But because they were bad people, like, you kind of felt sympathy for some of them, like Gareth. But once they started eating Bob's leg, all the sympathy was pretty much gone. And you were just waiting. Like, if you eat the leg of someone in Rick's group, that's it for those people. They're gonna die, and it's probably gonna be in some real gruesome way. And it was. And I'm not complaining how it happened. Other than everything that happened in the church, all the stuff with Gabriel, who, by the way, I reckon was a real good addition to the show. Now, before, the thing with Gareth's group, I only read just before I watched the episode. And I just read about Gabriel as well before the episode, so because I wanted to kind of get an idea who he was before I watched the episode. And so far, I like Gabriel. There are things about him, like I was watching an episode of The Talking Dead. They made this poll that should Gabriel be trusted, and most people said no. I think I said yes when I was watching it, but I'm not sure. Like, he does seem like a nice guy. Gabriel's just a bit of a wuss, but he will improve. Like, he can already hold a weapon, even if it's not for long. He can still hold a weapon, and I reckon he's going to get better. I don't think he's going to turn on the group. I don't see that happening, but again, I don't know what's going to happen. The show just surprises you. And the other addition to the show being Noah, I really like Noah as well. Also, I knew Noah from when he was on Everybody Hates Chris. So, when I heard he was going to be on the show, I was like, oh my god, I'm so excited. But other than all that, I have enjoyed this season so far, and I reckon the rest of this season is just going to be really good. So have you seen the mid-season finale? What did you think of it? What was your favourite part in the episode, if any? I don't know if I technically had a favourite part, but the whole stuff at the start with Rick running down Lamson, that was pretty good. And here's a question that you can answer in the comments below. See, like I said before, pictured before this episode that either Beth or Carol was gonna die this episode. And I'm sure a lot of people had that thought as well. And like I said, Beth dying just killed me. And I 100% would have rather Carol gone than Beth. Don't get me wrong though, I love Carol. She's grown on me so much in these last couple seasons. But I still would have preferred Beth because she was just younger. Carol had been in the show a lot longer, and I think it would have made more sense to get rid of Carol. So my question is for you, before watching this episode, who did you expect to see die? Beth or Carol? Well, if you thought Beth, you were right. But before this, who did you think? Comment below and let me know. And of course, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more. Still can't believe Beth is dead. Oh, I'm gonna go cry now.